Thank you for joining me, Glen-Nora Tjipura, on NMH at 1, where we highlight the news making waves in Namibia and beyond, ranging from current affairs, community stories, sports, and economic news. Coming up in this broadcast, Gawaxab denies links to $450 million Namibian Fabupharm tender. Namibia achieved 99% HIV-free births, and Redforce contracts under scrutiny. Do stick around for these and more on NMH at 1. Getting into our midday news update, the Miss Teen Namibia organization announced the top 10 finalists for this year's event. The winner will represent Namibia during the Miss Teen International 2025 competition. In the same vein, a preliminary show was held on Saturday night at Redforce, where they announced this year's top 10 contestants. The main crowning event is set to take place in July. Visual News highlights local stories from across Namibia. On the other side of the break, we take a look at that.
Welcome to What's Cooking, where culinary passion meets expert insights.
Somebody must really want to cook and want to cook good food.
Immerse yourself in the bustling world of professional kitchens as top chefs create mouthwatering dishes. Join us for in-depth interviews as our host explores the experiences and expertise of our guest chefs. Don't miss out. Tune in to What's Cooking on NTV every Friday at 2100 hours and let the culinary adventure begin.
Katima-Mulilo-based Moses Kamwela says the lack of development projects in the town is one of the many reasons young people turn to crime. Nikana Nangolo contributed this video.
For the youths in Katima, it's a great challenge because one, you find out we have more graduates, but there is no employment. It's not like people didn't go to school. A lot of them, they were even at UNAM. They got complete degrees, some of them, most of them, but they got no jobs. So for me, in my own observation, I would say, it's pointless for the government to be pushing these kids to be going and studying things whereby they can't create such employment. Maybe why do they not invest more into crafts? At least technical colleges, invest more in technical colleges because they help them. Even if they can't get a job, they can be self-employed. For example, a plumber, an electrician, a welder, or such kind of jobs. You will find out they have no skills, survival skills. Because naturally, it's almost like 20% of the youths in Africa, not only in Namibia or Zambezi, they are unemployed. They are the only employed part is 20%, 80% is unemployed. But they can only survive through businesses and that, of which most of them, they turn up to be drug addicts. Some, they tend to be criminals and all that. So especially here in Katima, we lack activities that can even take away their mind of criminology, the youth. But still, we have a youth center, but it's not that functional. Yeah, it's not that functional. It's just a couple of people who goes there. Just a few people, like artists, basically, are the only people I've been seeing there mostly.
That concludes our visual news. Moving on, after the break, the Namibian Sun leads us into the newspaper review segment.
We are so excited to be kickstarting your morning with the entertainment.
Everything was happening during this past weekend.
Yes. Exciting news.
Wow, no, she was killing it already.
In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term.
As well as keeping you informed on the issues that you need to know happening in and around our country.
Getting into our newspaper review, starting off with the Namibian Sun's front page, which reports that Bank of Namibia Governor Johannes Gawaxab has denied owning any business in Namibia, including Fabupharm, which allegedly received a questionable $451 million tender, supposedly with the help of Finance Minister Ipombushimi. Gawaxab, who was recently fined $1 million by the Namibia Competition Commission alongside his business associates for allegedly selling his businesses and shareholdings to family and friends, has been accused by activist Michael Amushelelo of using proxies to run his private businesses. As part of leading the Bank of Namibia, Gawaxab was required to relinquish his stakes in businesses to avoid conflict and bias. EOS Capital, a Namibian private equity fund manager that is managing the Allegro Fund and which Gawaxab co-owned before taking the central bank job, acquired 35% of the ordinary share capital of Fabupharm in 2016. Moving on page 3, the LGBTQI community and allies have criticized SWAPO Member of Parliament Jerry Ekanjo for fueling harassment and violence against the community following a recent increase in what many view as hate crimes. Members of the LGBTQI community are criticizing politicians for perpetuating targeted violence and demanding that politicians stop their campaign of hate against sexual minority groups. These demands were voiced during a meeting held on Wednesday in Swakopmund, convened by community activists and allies to address the issue of targeted violence against members of the LGBTQI community. Moving over to the Republicans' front page, the Environment Ministry will consider if the Fish River Canyon hiking trail should be closed after several rescue operations had to be undertaken since the hiking season opened on the 1st of May. Concern has spread whether for hikers' safety in the canyon and whether there is truly enough water to keep it open. Just last week, several stakeholders assisted in a rescue operation of 13 people from the canyon, which lasted about 35 hours. Conrad Jacobs, the National Operations Manager for MR 24/7, which was part of the rescue operation, told Namibian Sun the rescue consisted of one person with a broken ankle and 12 others who were ill. They are all South Africans. There were originally 3 different groups who ascended the canyon and had been walking for approximately 30 kilometers. Jacobs said that they received the first distress call from their emergency management room in Windhoek last Sunday afternoon. On page 3, the Katima Mulilo Town Council is disgruntled by NamWater's alleged continuous unwillingness to pay off a close to $3 million bill, while the water utility in response accuses the local authority of failing to provide invoices. According to Katima Mulilo Town Council CEO Rafa Liswanizo, Council for over a year, they have been trying to get NamWater to pay for its bill of over $2.5 million for rates, but the response has been negative. Liswanizo said that NamWater's accounts have also been handed over to Redforce, but still, NamWater is not cooperating. The accounting officer said that for years, Katima Mulilo was amongst the local authorities which were known for having high debts with NamWater, a situation which the local authority has since addressed. Moving over to the Allgemeine Zeitung's front page, it reports about the water crisis looming in the country's central areas. So according to Abraham Nehemiah, managing director of the state water utility NamWater, every drop of water now counts. An urgent warning has been issued that the contents of the dams in the central area of Namibia, with a combined water level of 18%, will not last until the next rainy season. This news is received with due criticism because more and more voices from the public have since January demanded clarity from the authorities once the rain stayed away, while the levels of the dams kept decreasing. The Ministry of Agriculture, Water Resources and Land Reform has so far failed to act decisively, and the city of Windhoek has not seriously addressed the issue either. The fact is that the authorities now once again look at solutions that were discussed during the droughts of 2012 to 2013 and 2018 to 2019. Every time the rains set in, it seems as though the long-term plans are being shelved again until the next crisis looms. On page 3, the Allgemeine Zeitung leads with an article about waste management that seems to develop into a situation where by the time June arrives, contracts of the employees in the municipal waste management will expire without these people having the opportunity to find a new livelihood. The employees who are concerned that their contracts will not be renewed demand an end to contracts continuously fixed for a term of 6 months, which amounts to exploitation. While these people fear for their livelihoods, the city of Windhoek has proudly announced the introduction of a so-called waste buyback center, which will see people selling their recyclable waste to the waste department. This is seen to be creating jobs. We'll continue with our newspaper review after this.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
Still with our newspaper review, the Namibian's front page reports that about 98.5% of children born to HIV-positive mothers in Namibia last year were HIV-free. Health Minister Kalumbi Shangula said at a World Health Organization summit last week. He noted that the country has made significant progress in eliminating mother-to-child transmission, MTCT, of HIV and hepatitis B. Shangula said Namibia has been certified by the WHO for achieving the silver tier on the path to elimination of PTE and of MTCT of the hepatitis B virus, and the bronze tier on the PTE of MTCT of HIV in 2020 and 2021. The overall MTCT rate of HIV was 4.02% in 2020, which translates to 603 MTCT cases per 1,000 live births, and 4.41% in 2021, translating to 594 MTCT cases per 1,000 live births, he said. Shangula added that public health facilities also provide preconception counseling for HIV-positive women and men who are planning to conceive to do so safely. On page 3, the procedures followed in last week's suspension of 2 finance officers at the Walvis Bay municipality were legal, says Council Attorney Richard Metcalf. Reports of a rift among council members over whether the suspensions were procedural emerged after Walvis Bay Mayor Trevino Forbes issued a memorandum to Acting Chief Executive John Esterhazen to halt the suspensions. This came after the resolution to enforce the suspensions was taken. Forbes used the local authorities to act to substantiate his attempt to halt the suspensions, suggesting that the council's management committee was responsible for the appointment or suspension of a general manager. Municipal Finance General Manager Franz Gonteb was suspended along with Finance Manager Johanna Shudute on Wednesday, pending an investigation into the contractual agreement between the municipality and Redforce Debt Management. Over to the New Era's front page, which leads with a story that no exemption or approval was granted by the Line Ministry for Local Authorities and State-Owned Enterprises, SOEs, to acquire external debt collection services. Several SOEs and local authorities have contracted Redforce Debt Management to collect outstanding debt from clients, from which Redforce is expected to pocket millions of dollars. They are set to collect almost $2 billion on behalf of SOEs and local authorities. The SOEs include the Namibia Airports Company, which is owed $60 million, the National Housing Enterprise $53 million, the Communications Regulatory Authority of Namibia $12 million, the Social Security Commission $80 million, New Era Publication Corporation $21 million, and Agribank $113 million. Now, local authorities who are owed money for services rendered are the municipalities of Windhoek $400 million, Hobabis $90 million, Keetmanshoop $78 million, Omaruru $34 million, Okahandja $50 million, Ondangwa $80 million, Oshakati $80 million, Katima Mulilo $145 million, Hendy's Bay $60 million, Outapi $24 million, and Rundu $370 million Namibian dollars. On page 3, the Angolan children roaming the streets across the country will be rounded up and taken to a safe place before the end of June. Minister of Home Affairs, Immigration, Safety and Security Albert Kawana has said, "We have secured some premises where they will be kept. They will be profiled with the involvement of the Angolan government, and we will look forward to resolving this issue as soon as possible," said the minister. Kawana made the remarks when he met with the Oshana regional leadership last Wednesday to sensitize them to spearhead the ongoing mass registration of citizens without national documents, including undocumented persons and stateless persons. The minister stated that every Namibian is entitled to possess a national document. National documents are very important because they enable our citizens to access various services from the government, and therefore to use it is a very important exercise, said Kawana. The Market Watch reports that the price monster might be on a downward trend in Namibia, but the deceleration in inflation does not necessarily imply tangible economic benefits. Simon Storm has warned. Inflation rates continue to be significantly elevated, and the inflation outlook remains vulnerable to several risks, notably in the realm of food prices. This could escalate further due to the impact of the El Nino weather condition, Simon Storm says in their analysis of the latest inflation figures. Data released by the Namibia Statistics Agency last week show overall annual inflation averaged 4.8% last, significantly down from 6.1% in April 2023. Simon Storm's projections indicate a deceleration in inflation from an average of 5.9% in 2023 to 4.9% this year. Last month, the inflation rate for food and non-alcoholic beverages was 4.9% year-on-year, down from 13.5% year-on-year in April 2023. Food, bread and cereals, as well as oils. GIPF still pondering oil and gas investments. An update on this coming up as we move over to economic news.
Hello and welcome to today's Sports Rep Show.
I am your host, Jesse Jackson Kauraika. In replay, Namibia, who had won the toss for the first time on this tour.
Good day everyone, time for international sports news, starting off with tennis news, both on the WTA for women's and
Getting into our economic news, the government institution's pension fund says it has not yet made a final decision regarding an investment in oil and gas. At this point, there are no firm decisions to place particular investment in oil and gas, but the fund is monitoring those economic developments, said GIPF Chief Executive Officer Martin Nkubi. The discoveries are happening in the country, which is likely to have a positive impact on the nation's growth trajectory, including people. Therefore, any investor with capital will be looking out for such opportunities because they also present the potential for good returns. Nkubi's views echo the previous position of the GIPF's former CEO, David Nyoma. Last year, Nyoma said that GIPF was consulting stakeholders to determine the most suitable time to enter the oil and gas sector, considering both potential returns and investment risk. Let's take a look at our economic indicators. The Namibian dollar trades against the British pound at 22.97, against the euro at 19.80, against the US dollar at 18.37, 2 Namibian dollars and 54 cents gets you 1 Chinese yuan. On the Namibia Stock Exchange, Namibian Breweries Limited went up at 0.03%, while Ledger Holdings Namibia Limited went up as well at 2.50%. First Rand Namibia Limited went down at 0.50%. On the commodities market, gold went down while copper, platinum and Brent crude oil went up. Brent crude oil trading at 0.53%, going for $83.45 per barrel. Overall index went down at 0.05%, while local index went up at 0.12%. On the other side of the break, we take a look at our news from the continent.
Welcome to What's Cooking, where culinary passion meets expert insights.
Somebody must really want to cook and want to cook good food.
Immerse yourself in the bustling world of professional kitchens as top chefs create mouthwatering dishes. Join us for in-depth interviews as our host explores the experiences and expertise of our guest chefs. Don't miss out. Tune in to What's Cooking on NTV every Friday at 2100 hours and let the culinary adventure begin.
Getting into our news from Africa, plans to introduce new taxes and increase existing ones have triggered widespread criticism in Kenya. The price of bread is set to climb after the National Treasury proposed removing the staple product from a value-added tax (VAT) exemption list. The cost of mobile money transfers, airtime and data are also set to go up as the government seeks to raise an additional $2.4 billion in taxes in the financial year that starts in July. In the 2024 financial bill published on Saturday, the government also proposed a new motor vehicle tax that will see drivers pay up to $750 annually to keep their vehicles on the road. The tax hikes are part of a series of financial measures introduced by President William Ruto's government to fund its extensive infrastructure and social programs. The move has generated sharp criticism, with politicians and human rights activists calling the taxes burdening. The opposition has threatened to mobilize protests across the country if the government goes ahead with the new tax measures. Last year, the government introduced several taxes, including a controversial housing levy, despite widespread objection from some Kenyans. We'll be right back with our international news. Russian President Vladimir Putin has removed his long-standing ally Sergei Shoigu as defense minister, the Kremlin has announced. The 68-year-old has been in the role since 2012 and is to be appointed Secretary of Russia's Security Council. Papers published by the upper chamber of the Russian parliament said Shoigu will be replaced by Deputy Prime Minister Andrei Belousov. The Kremlin said the defense ministry needed to stay innovative. Russian government papers show Putin wants Shoigu to take over from Nikolai Patrushev on the powerful Security Council. It is not yet clear what Patrushev's new post will be. Shoigu has close links with President Putin, often taking him on fishing trips in his native Siberia. He was given the defense portfolio despite having no military background, which rankled with some of his top brass. A civil engineer by profession, Mr. Shoigu rose to prominence as the head of the Emergencies and Disaster Relief Ministry in the 1990s. He often looked out of his depth as the defense minister, especially after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine more than 2 years ago. BBC Europe analyst Denny Aberhard says. Kremlin press spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the proposed appointment of a civilian showed the role of defense minister called for innovation. He said Russia was becoming more like the Soviet Union in the mid-1980s, when a high proportion of GDP went on military spending. As a result, it was necessary to make sure that military expenditure was better integrated into Russia's overall economy, he added. After the break, we take a look at our local sports news. To stay with NMH at 1.
Are you tired of just hanging around at home while waiting for something to do? Check out eticket.diary.my.na for what's hot on the social scene across the country. Or if you're arranging an event you'd like us to feature, contact Jareen at we.com.na. We can sell your tickets too.
Getting into our local sports news, the Namibia School Sports Union annual flagship event, its National Athletics Championship, was held successfully over the weekend at the Independence Stadium in Windhoek and showcased a competitive spirit among young athletes from various regions across Namibia. Athletes exhibited exceptional performance as well as breaking national records across multiple sports disciplines. The Debmarine Namibia Premiership Giants avoided potentially embarrassing exits against lower-ranked opposition in the PST-Bet NFA Cup to progress to the round of 16. Civics FC showed Swakopmund FC that they still are a bigger force by beating them 5-0 at the Unam Stadium on Saturday. We'll now take a look at our international sports news. Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag blamed an injury crisis at the Old Trafford club for a poor campaign after his side fell to a 1-0 loss to Arsenal in the Premier League on Sunday, their 9th home defeat across all competitions this season. United, who have now equaled their tally for most defeats at home in a season, had at least 6 defenders out through injury, as well as playmakers Bruno Fernandes and forward Marcus Rashford. Germany is gearing up to host the Euro 2024 Football Championship under high security as global threats cast a shadow. But on the field, the home team will be looking to prove they are finally back in form. On the other side of this, we take a look at the highlights from today's broadcast. Taking a look at the highlights from today's broadcast, plans to introduce new taxes and increase existing ones have triggered widespread criticism in Kenya. The price of bread is set to climb after the National Treasury proposed removing the staple product from a value-added tax exemption list. Russian President Vladimir Putin has removed his long-standing ally Sergei Shoigu as defense minister, the Kremlin has announced. The 68-year-old has been in the role since 2012 and is to be appointed Secretary of Russia's Security Council. The Debmarine Namibia Premiership Giants avoided potentially embarrassing exits against lower-ranked opposition in the PST-Bet NFA Cup to progress to the round of 16. Civics FC showed Swakopmund FC that they still are a bigger force by beating them 5-0 at the Unam Stadium on Saturday. Those have been your highlights. Remember to tune in every weekday at 1 p.m. to spend your lunch hour with NMH at 1, catching up on the latest news in Namibia and beyond. From me, Glen-Nora Tjipura, until next time.